was there, here are some of them. We visited various different places in Kenya that were remarkable. But the experience I wanted to focus on today was our trip to the Maasai tribe. If you're not familiar, the Maasai is a tribe in Africa. There are over 40 different tribes in Africa, including the Kichisi, Ludia, and Samal. And of course, the Maasai. Here's a picture of me with the Maasai tribe. The Maasai tribe is located across the entire continent of Africa, but the one we visited was in Kenya near Amboseli National Park. And by my observation, including a little over 24 families, which, by the way, based on their tribal dance that they showed us, are excellent jumpers. Spending time with the Maasai tribe, I noticed everybody demonstrated a level of curiosity and happiness that was refreshing and contagious. We took a tour of Nairobi. There were school children everywhere we went. These children seemed to me to be absorbed in the native dances and the reconstruction of original tribal lodging. As we walked through, the attention shifted to us. It was not only children demonstrating curiosity and happiness, it was people my age and older were curious about everything. In the Maasai base camp, the warriors who were our guides would ask about our personal lives, I felt jolted with the contrast. Everybody here appeared gloomier and sadder than those in the Maasai tribe. This sparked my curiosity even further. After contemplating
Thinking about it. Contemplating, like a plate.
Contemplating.
Like that.
Don't worry, I'll work on this, I promise. Contemplative thinking. I decided to delve deeper into the concept between curiosity and happiness, as well as the impact culture has on curiosity. Let's look at some research. Todd Cashin from the George Mason University conducted a study that found people who exhibited higher levels of curiosity experienced higher levels of life satisfaction compared to the less curious peers. Curious people reported having a greater sense of meaning in life, which is a better predictor of long-lasting and stable happiness. Curiosity and happiness have a direct correlation. Makes sense to me based on what I found spending time with the Maasai tribe. But it still didn't quite make sense why. The Maasai lived in huts made out of animal dung and sturdy sticks, gathered from the countryside. Countryside. They didn't call in a construction team. They utilized the natural resources around them to create a village that was not only comfortable, but could be dismantled and moved with the herd if needed. The Maasai don't order things off of Amazon or Temu. They utilize the natural resources around them to create bowls, utensils, jewelry, clothing, etc. While we were there, we saw them make colorful beads out of pulled mud from the creek side. And all of the colorful clothing worn or made in the village used natural dyes. We never saw any guns while we were there. When the Maasai would patrol the base camp to keep us safe from prowling lions and hippos, they would carry around long spears made out of polished ash wood and the tip cast in steel. Our culture in the States is overwhelmingly convenient. We can look anything up at any time or purchase any service or item with a few clicks of a button. But this ease to access and information equate to more curiosity and happiness? Actually, no. Research suggests that America's well-being has declined since the 1950s. According to the American Psychological Association, hold on. But consumption has only increased. God, I cannot read that.
Do you need to read it, or do you want to read it? You know your script, say it. Don't look at it.
That's a good point. Hold on. Materialistic values that consumer culture supports may be to blame. Those who pursue materialistic items and wealth tend to experience fewer positive emotions. On the other hand, life satisfaction is, surprise, correlated with having less materialistic values. This indicates that culturally speaking, a culture that values curiosity and creativity in simpler things in life equates to a culture with higher increased happiness. Curiosity is available to all of us. In fact, we are born with an abundance of it. In the 300 BC, Greek philosopher Aristotle famously said, "Humans are curious by nature. I think we all know how true this is about the little ones around us." According to the FutureLearn.com, 3-year-olds on average ask their parents about 100 questions per day. But our culture accidentally discourages curiosity. How many of us have heard the saying, "Curiosity killed the cat"? Or had adults in our lives tell us to stop being so nosy? Has anybody here actually ever seen a cat be killed because it was demonstrating curiosity about something? How many parents don't have the time or the patience to answer even a small fraction of those 100 questions a day? And how?
Keep going.
The result. By the time kids are 10 to 11, they pretty much stop asking those questions. Even more concerning, by the age of 25, only 2% of people can think outside of the box. We have become conformists rather than explorers of the world around us. But we also lose more than happiness. According to the professors at Alaska Fairbanks, being curious helps improve long-term memory. Albert Einstein said, "The most important thing is to never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing." His own curiosity led to the theory of relativity and taming of the atom. Where would the world be today if his innate driving curiosity had stifled during childhood? I think I can speak for all of us when I say if we had a magic genie when we were young that granted us a life of increased happiness, we would all accept the gift and gratefully cherish it. The good news is that genie has actually provided us all with curiosity in abundance at the moment of birth. The bad news is Americans, unlike the Maasai tribe, are collectively rejecting that gift on behalf of the children around us before they can decide whether to accept it on their own. So, how can we collectively be this genie for our little ones around us so that they can stay curious throughout their lives when we live in a culture that's working against us? One of the most significant ways is by answering questions, asking in deep questions that make them think, letting kids be kids, and supporting different learning styles such as dyslexia. You can even spark curiosity in yourself by engaging in new hobbies, engaging in conversations, reading books, and looking things up that make you interested. And finally, travel. Exposures to new cultures, lifestyles, and the way of living inevitably sparks curiosity. I know it did for me. I wouldn't be standing in front of you today had the curiosity I observed in the Maasai tribe not sparked curiosity in myself. I want to thank everybody for coming out today, as well as the board who chose me, my grandpa Bob, and the Maasai tribe. Thank you for letting me satisfy your curiosity about curiosity.
Awesome. Wait, go back for a minute. Okay, so you're not gonna go to Dr. Hawkins, but we have some things. Talk a little slower. When you're making picture transitions, like you stop speaking for a long period of time, shorten that, or just don't stop speaking when you click the slides.
Okay.
And don't read the teleprompter. You don't need it, and you keep stuttering when you look at it. You know it. And if you keep doing that, we'll take it away.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're gonna go with Lila. You're gonna go with Lila somewhere where there's not somebody, and you are just going to recite your speech and listen to any of the feedback that she gives you, and you get to be as fast as
Jaden, I love it.
Thank you.
You do know it,
Yes.
and it's really good.
Should we do another one?
I mean, yeah.
Who's next? Chris. Are you ready?
Sure. Give it a try. See what happens.
Do you want the stand?
No.
Introducing Chris DeFore. DeFore? Okay, wait. Introducing Chris DeFore.
No.
Introducing Chris.
Di Fiore.
DeFore?
Di Fiore.
I just, Sarah will present you.
It's all. What's killing curiosity? So we're going to explore today 6 barriers that I've experienced with experiencing curiosity. And I'll be drawing upon my life experiences as a forest scientist. That's a picture of me figuring out the age of that tree by pulling out a little pencil-sized core of it. My experience as an environmental science teacher, a wilderness instructor, and just my human experience on this earth soaking up sunshine in the forest. So we'll start off with an activity. It's a picture. I'd like you all to think about what that's a picture of. I'll give you a few seconds to consider that. So, if you were making some observations about that, since you might not know what that's a picture of, you might have noticed a few things. First, you might have noticed that this talk is being given by somebody who is really passionate about forests, so maybe it has something to do with the forest. You might also notice all the different colorations and patterns on there. So there's lots of different blues and purples and whites. There's also lots of different shapes, bubbles, so forth. And you might be thinking, oh, maybe this is kind of a trick. Maybe it's zoomed in really far or zoomed out. And you'd be right, it's zoomed in. The answer is, it's a leaf. And it's a zoomed in microscopic underside of a leaf. And each of those bubbles is what we call a stomata. And stomatas are basically responsible for air and gas and other things going in and out of the leaf. Now, you might not know that if you don't study plants all the day, but what's important about this is not the answer, but the journey you might have gone on. What are the questions you asked when you were presented with a picture that you don't know the answer to? What are the observations that you make? Let's try this again. What's that a picture of? I'm gonna give you less time this time. The correct answer is a leaf, or a maple leaf, sugar maple leaf, to get really specific. You probably didn't go on that same journey that time because you had an answer. And that leads me to my first curiosity barrier, which is naming stuff. Once you have a name for something, we tune out. It's as if we know it, even though that's not true. If you go to a party and you get introduced to somebody, you find out their name, you don't actually know them, you just know what they're called. You've learned a sound to utter out of your mouth that represents that person. You don't actually know them until you've heard some stories from them and spend some time and laugh with them and so forth. So why do we do that with other things? When I lead plant walks and take people out in the forest, I don't tell them the name of a plant until they've experienced it, until they've looked closely at it, until they've looked at the context of it. until they've looked at the colors, maybe felt it, maybe listened to the sound of it in the wind, maybe they've had the opportunity to smell it or taste it. You get to know the plant, and then you tell them the name. Because if I say the name right away, you tune out. So what if I were to ask a different question? What do you observe about this picture? What are some observations you can make? And that time you might be noticing some more of the details about it. It's not all green, there's some yellows in there. There's holes in the leaf. On the left side there's a little tan spot, which might prompt you to ask more questions, be more curious. What caused those holes? Was there a disease, an insect, maybe something blowing into it? So there's a lot more questions, a different observation journey you go on with that question. Curiosity barrier number 2, the need for an answer. So on that journey towards an answer, there's lots of curious questions that we'll ask. But it can become really dangerous when we think we know the truth. Because if we think we know the truth, then our pursuit for the truth ends sometimes. I think an example of this is lightning. We're taught in school that we know the answer of what causes lightning. There's positive and negative charges, they build up, they separate, and eventually a spark ignites. Not true, even though it's on standardized tests. It's one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in lightning physics, which is a very specific field. And how do we not tell people that? That's really exciting. It's a mystery for all of us to solve and to contemplate about different theories. One of the leading theories out there right now is that there's cosmic rays coming down from space that are igniting the lightning. Because that previous mechanism that I said about these charges separating, we know that the amount, the voltage, the power that creates is not enough to spark lightning. It's way more exciting for kids, for everybody to be contemplating this mystery. I think it'd be neat if on tests, multiple choice answers, one of the options was science doesn't know yet, when that's appropriate. There's another slide that I moved in here. So another example for need for an answer would be the redwood forest. So redwood trees out in the western US are some of the largest, tallest trees in the world. And if I were to ask you about those redwood trees, how do they get water? We'd probably all answer they get it through their roots. And you'd be right. We have an answer. Done. Check out. But that's not the end of the story. Once you have an answer, it does not mean that the mystery is over. There's time that it's a time to stop being curious. Because those redwood trees are super tall, and getting the water from the bottom to the top of those redwood trees is really difficult. So there's other ways that those trees get water. Through the stomata, through those leaves, those holes in the leaves I showed you earlier. And the process is called foliar water uptake. And the crazy thing is this is not uncommon. Any tree that's growing in anywhere that's a humid, wet environment, including around here, is probably going through foliar water uptake and getting some percentage of its water directly through its leaves. We wouldn't be asking that question if we just ended on it gets it through its roots. Curiosity barrier number 3, good old peer pressure. If I ask you all in the audience, what questions do you have for me about trees? The first thing a lot of us might go into is an internal dialogue about what are other people going to think of me? What am I worried about? I'm worried about looking stupid.Maybe I wasn't paying attention to Chris when he was saying that last slide. What if I asked him a question about something he already said? There's an internal dialogue that happens there. And as a result of us creating a culture in the United States where we prioritize knowledge and our self-image over top of curiosity. That's a challenging thing to overcome. Barrier number 4, instant gratification culture. Another question for the audience. How old is the oldest tree on Earth? Ever found on Earth? How old is the oldest tree on Earth? So, once again, we can go through that journey, that curiosity journey. Maybe you can draw upon and try to recall information you already know. Maybe you've seen a tree that was cut down and you counted the rings. Maybe it was 50 years old, maybe 60, 70, so you know at least that old. You just draw upon all that information, maybe think about who you could ask that answer. Or you could do this. You could Google it. And many of us maybe are having that urge right now to get our phones out and Google that answer. You get an answer in a second. And now we've got AI, which is even You can ask even more complicated questions. While it's amazing we have access to all this information so fast, it's really useful. It's a new phenomenon, and as a result, we're losing out on this journey. Instead of going through this process of searching for information, starting in the 1990s, 2000s, we have access to information really quickly. So we don't ask those same questions anymore. We don't look for clues. We don't go on that search. And that's an important journey. I want to further illustrate that with this example. I lived wilderness trips for a while, and in those wilderness trips, we did navigation with a map and a compass. And when you take students out, adults and kids, and teach them how to use a map and compass in the woods on trails that are unmarked or even off trail, it's an interesting experience that happens, because when you're navigating with map and compass, you never know 100% if you're going the right way. All you have is the clues around you. You might be 80% sure, but along that entire journey, there's a little bit of anxiety the entire way, and you're constantly looking and searching for clues and asking questions. Oh, the trail's starting to go uphill a little bit. Is it going to trend that way for a long time? Is that hill on this map? We started to turn west. What does that mean? You're asking a lot of questions along the way. You're being really curious that entire journey. There's a little bit of anxiety, and that's an important experience because it's uncertainty that you're going through and you're overcoming and learning how to navigate. And if we're going to solve the big problems of the world, whether those are social, whether it's just starting a business, a new business, you have to be able to navigate uncertainty. And if we're not experiencing uncertainty, we're replacing it with Google every single time. What does that mean? What are we preparing ourselves for? Google Maps is the opposite of this. Every time that I type an address into Google Maps and I go driving, it tells me exactly where I am every single second of the way. If I get off that map, oh my gosh, it yells at me constantly. I know I'm doing the wrong thing, even if I'm trying to get gas. It's constant feedback all along the way. Think about video games as well. They give you constant feedback every single second of the way. This is a new experience. We have not experienced this in human history. And I think that should be looked at a little intentionally. Number 5, curiosity barrier number 5, belief bias. This is the idea that you believe something, and then you're presented with information that is contrary to what you believe, but you still cling to that old belief, even though you've got new information. A colleague of mine that leads plant walks came upon this plant. This is sassafras. Maybe some of us are familiar with it. He then handed out a leaf to each of the participants and asked them to each taste it. And then asked everyone, what does the sassafras leaf taste like? Somebody immediately said, root beer. And that's interesting. It's interesting because it doesn't taste like root beer. But that person probably knew that sassafras was an ingredient historically used to make root beer, along with birch. But it was the root of the sassafras plant that's used to make root beer, not the leaf. The leaf is a thickener used in gumbo. So, in that case, this person probably was clinging to a belief in their mind, and because of them clinging to that belief, it was clouding their ability to actually observe something, even though they were trying to tasting it. There's a really great quote by Alan Watts on this in relation to science. The believer will open his mind to the truth on the condition that it fits in with his preconceived ideas and wishes. Faith, on the other hand, is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it might turn out to be. In this sense of the word, faith is the essential virtue of science. And I think it's an important point because so much so with science nowadays, our beliefs are getting in the way of doing real science. Because real science is about observing and taking in that information as it is, and not letting our wants and desires and beliefs stopping us, like adjust that information. Oh, there's that slide. Curiosity barrier number 6, confirmation bias. This is where you're seeking out information that backs you up. You're seeking out information that confirms what you already believe, and you pretty much just ignore everything else. It makes us feel good, right? I did this when I was like really deep into the science of climate change. Every day there was a hot day, I'm like, oh, that's a hot day, it's climate change. Even though I know that climate change is all about averages over long periods of time. But I loved having that evidence, like, oh, it's 95 degrees outside, I'm right. Climate change is real. And that's dangerous because it's all just about feeling good and building yourself up. It's not, once again, you're not having an objective understanding and curiosity about the world. And it's becoming really dangerous and toxic in our culture. And I think we've all experienced this. All you gotta do is look at all the different news sources that are out there. We seek out news sources that back up what we believe. It makes us feel good. And then on top of that, those news sources will then mischaracterize other people's opinions, make them out to be immoral and evil and different than what those opinions actually are. And it's dividing us. We won't even talk to people with different opinions because we think we already know what they believe, because we've been told what they believe by sources we sought out or that we were fed. We all know the echo chambers, the algorithms that are designed to feed us information that backs up what we already believe. And it becomes really dangerous. So, thinking about these curiosity barriers, I think about the old saying of there's no such thing as a bad question. And I think that's an important sentiment because it encourages us to ask more questions, especially in a classroom setting. But I think we can do better than that. I think there's a lot of complexity in today's world with how we engage as a curious person. And I think that involves taking a lot of time and attention in our classrooms and our life to explore how to navigate those. It's a complicated skill to learn, and it's one that involves a lot of practice and mistakes. So I'm going to end with a picture, a quote, and a challenge for you all. Picture, this is my favorite tree in the world. It's a white oak tree. It's growing completely horizontally. Most of the roots, you can't see it, they're exposed. And I came upon this tree 12 years ago. It looked just like this. I visited this tree a little bit ago. It looks just like this. I don't know how that's how it's alive. And every time I see it, I'm just really curious how it's alive, how is it growing like that, and all about the little ecosystem that's being developed underneath of it from all the leaves falling and creating soil. A quote: Terence McKenna, famous philosopher, made the observation once that when people go into the forest, they'll come upon trees like this one, ones that are growing in precarious situations with limited resources, and usually the reaction by people to those trees is one of wonder and curiosity. It's like, wow, how has that tree grown the way it has in the conditions that it has? How's that tree become what it is? He continues to say, wouldn't it be wonderful if people approached other people with the same curiosity and wonder, regardless of their situation, and recognize that every person is going through struggles. And the struggles look different. This one's a little bit similar to the first one, but that tree's growing in a place where there's high winds, extreme temperatures, almost no soil, almost no water. But it's adapted to grow in a place with no competition. It doesn't have to worry about other trees taking over its sunlight. These trees are the opposite. They have tons of resources, but they all have to compete with each other for the sunlight. And as a result, those trees look different. The ones in the bottom left, they tend to be grown much straighter and taller because they have to compete with each other than the one on the cliff. This tree looks like it has everything. It has lots of sunlight, has lots of resources, but if you look deeper underground, the struggle's hidden. Its roots are surrounded by asphalt and sidewalks. So now a challenge. In the spirit of these pictures, I would like us to think about how we can navigate those curiosity barriers and do that in a conversation with somebody else. So we can think about approaching somebody, finding somebody, and remaining curious throughout that entire conversation. That means not going to battle with them. That means not thinking about your answers or your arguments during that conversation, but rather being truly curious throughout that entire conversation. You can start with something maybe it's not super controversial. Maybe you discuss the topic of, do aliens exist? That could get controversial. But the real challenge is, can you do that when you're talking to somebody with different values and different political beliefs than yourself? Can you remain curious throughout that entire conversation? Can you navigate those barriers? Can you avoid tuning out when you think you hear a word that means something to you? And can you look deeper into what they're trying to say and what they believe? Can you accept that neither one of you probably has the answers to a lot of these problems, and that's okay? Can you be courageous in the face of peer pressure of those who might not look favorably upon even interacting with somebody who has different beliefs than yourself? Can you navigate the uncertainty that's going to come with this conversation? And can you overcome the belief bias that even when you are presented with information that might not match up with what you believe, are you open to it? You don't have to agree with it, but can you remain open to it? And of course, can you lost my train of thought. So just want to say that I think our world needs more curious people, and I think that's one of the greatest needs of our world right now is that we each become more curious. Thank you.
All right, Chris, that was so much better.
That was really good.
So much better.
Really good.
So you definitely do not need to see Dr. Huggins. That was fantastic. Are we still planning on doing the sassafras thing she mentioned?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Perfect.
here, there's a veggie tray that's on the edge of the table closest to the door. There's chips and drinks that are going to be on the far wall that has a bunch of junk on it. So please help yourself. There are plates and napkins. Your salad is also with the sandwiches. Okay. Also, throw your trash away. Let's go.
And don't bring it in here.
I want to start out by saying I'm a fan of cats, and I apologize for any negative thoughts I bring into the room about cats and danger or cat style. Really, this is a toddler that is meant to tell us something about ourselves. There's nothing really with cats. If anything, from my experience, it's dogs who are in danger from their goofy behavior. Now, according to Wikipedia, this phrase started as care killed the cat. And here, care meant worry or sorrow for others. So the idea was if you worry too much, it can kill you. The phrase switched from care killed the cat to curiosity killed the cat. And this happened in the 1800s. And here, what the idea was that certain questions that are unnecessary or certain investigations are unnecessary are dangerous. If anything, from my experience, it's dogs who engage in risky behaviors that are dangerous. Now, just to give me a sense of who's in the audience, I'd like to have you all just respond to a couple questions by raising your hands. So first of all, how many of you have ever heard of the expression, curiosity killed the cat? Okay, great. And how many of you think that curiosity can be dangerous? Okay, great, thank you. And finally, how many of you have a cat? Great, that gives me a sense of the audience, and now I can proceed. Now, from Wikipedia, this phrase actually started out as something different. It was care killed the cat. And here, care means a worry or sorrow for others. So literally it meant that if you worry too much, it can kill you. And the phrase shifted from care killed the cat to curiosity killed the cat in the 1800s. And here the meaning was that being curious and asking the wrong questions or doing unnecessary investigations was dangerous. Now, I researched some literature at the Times to get a sense of how this phrase was used in particular. O. Henry wrote a short story called Schools and Schools, and there's a quote in there. Curiosity can do more than kill a cat. And if emotions, curiosity can do more than kill a cat. And if emotions, well recognized as feminine, are inimical to feline life, then jealousy would leave the whole world catless. There's a character in the story who's jealous. A female character is jealous of something going on, and she's curious, and then she ends up invading the privacy of this man that's in the story. And it's a common theme that comes up around curiosity, which we'll talk about. Eugene O'Neill, in his play Different, has a character named Benny. And Benny says, again, this is like in 1909, Benny says, curiosity killed the cat. Ask me no questions, and I'll tell you no lies. And what's going on here is that Benny doesn't want to answer. There's a female character, and she's asking Benny some questions, and Benny doesn't want to answer the questions. So what he says, and what happens is, because there are questions he doesn't want to answer, is that he's just going to tell lies. And this theme is going to come up again. Benny is saying here is that when you're met with tough questions, the best alternative, the best option for you is to lie. Now I'm going to return to the idea of danger and curiosity and necessary and idea that curiosity is sometimes attributed to as a female trait, especially when the questions are unpopular. But first, I want to go through and talk a little bit about the nature of creativity, of curiosity. The nature of curiosity and why it is so important to ourselves and our communities. Dr. Elizabeth Bonowitz, who is a researcher at Harvard University, called curiosity, writes that curiosity is a sensation that acts like a filter that allows us to decide what to attend to in the world. Dr. Bonowitz compares curiosity to a sense, like taste or smell, that allows us to figure out what's important, to make decisions, and ultimately to take action. In 2012, Giroux and Clark studied curiosity in schools, and they found out a number of things. First off, curiosity is incredibly important to student achievement and success in schools in general. They also found out that in order for students to be curious, they need to be comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. Now, from my observations as a teacher and principal, curiosity is really important in schools and really important for student success. And it's a huge driver to student engagement. Teachers all try to maximize the opportunity for students to ask questions and to really engage in their learning. And what makes all the difference in the world is if students are curious. So curiosity is a really good thing for students to have in schools. And in addition, it's really important outside of schools. And in my research, it's being recognized in the business world as a really hot topic. So for instance, in a 2022 BBC report, curiosity was listed as a neglected trait that increases success in the workplace. And then in 2023, Forbes magazine called it a overlooked leadership resource that promoted creative thinking and orientation on solutions and a better workplace climate. In fact, in my research, the overwhelming data is that curiosity is important to success outside of success across all sectors. And now I'd like to come back to the proverb and the idea of curiosity. Now back to the proverb and the warnings about curiosity. First, what is the relationship between curiosity and danger? Now coming back to the Giroux report, they found that curiosity has precursors, things that have to be true for students to be curious. Students need to prefer uncertainty and ambiguity. In 2016, my office and I researched, in 2016, at the Oregon Chief Education Office, we researched Now I'd like to come back to the idea of curiosity and the warnings about it. And the warnings about curiosity. First of all, what is the relationship between curiosity and danger? So let's start going back to Giroux and Clark. They wrote that there are precursors to curiosity, namely that students need to feel comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. So in 2016, I worked at the Oregon Chief Education Office, and we were the first state, we wrote legislation in our office, and we were the first state in the nation to study the effects of trauma and trauma-informed practices in schools. And one thing we discovered is that children who have experienced adverse early childhood experiences often come into schools not comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. And if you put together with Giroux and Clark, that means that students who have experienced trauma when they were young come into school less likely to be comfortable being curious and much more likely to have a reason to be cautious. And it was clear that in our research that the extent to which students account for trauma in the schools led to the extent to which schools account for trauma affects the equitable distribution of curiosity. And the effect of not dealing with this, not accounting for it, meant that certain groups of students cemented an advantage, and other groups of students never felt comfortable enough or safe enough to be curious in schools. So that's curiosity in danger. And what about unnecessary questions? Well, again, from my personal experience, either in schools or in the greater community, is that when curious questions come from those with less social status, they're more likely to be unwelcome. And I've seen a myriad of social interactions where certain questions are okay to ask and certain are not. And I have experienced that when certain folks ask questions to the wrong people or the wrong kinds of questions, those folks are ostracized, shunned, discriminated against, or worse. All this comes back to killing the cat and the idea that there are unnecessary questions and necessary questions. And the big question is, who gets to decide what's necessary? Another dynamic with curiosity and the proverb that I didn't expect I would find, but honestly the more I read about it and thought about it, it made a lot of sense to me, is that when curious questions come that are not popular, that is seen as a feminine trait. And you see it in the media. You see the strong silent type and the men who don't ask for directions. And conversely, you see gossiping women, nagging mothers. Women who nag, overbearing mothers, gossiping women. And the ultimate expression of this archetype is the Karen character. Now, men also can be bigoted and racist, so the question I'm curious about is why do we depict this character as a woman? The patriarchy says that women ask too many questions, they're curious about the wrong things, and often that they should just shut their mouths. So to recap, curiosity is vital, but it's not equally distributed in our system and not equally supported by our schools. Curiosity is something where there are unnecessary questions and necessary questions. Some people's questions are more necessary than others. We've also established that women are often labeled as the ones who ask the wrong kind of questions. And finally, inconvenient questions are often supposed to be met with a pattern of lies. Now, what's not a downer is that we can improve on all these things. Asking questions needs to be normalized across our system, our school system in particular. Students, staff, and parents and families need to feel comfortable asking questions. And if they come from a background of trauma, that means those schools and systems need to use trauma-informed practices to level the playing field. We all need to recognize and lift up curiosity. It is a strength collectively for all of us. Those who ask questions are not villains, they are heroes. And if curiosity is a feminine trait, whatever that means, it's something that we should all have. I believe the proverb, curiosity kills the cat, points to dynamic issues going on right now in our society. I also believe that it's a lot easier to tell the truth than to tell lies, especially a whole bunch of lies. So the key for us, as long as we can do it, is to keep asking questions. In the 1900s, as this proverb got out there, I found evidence in newspapers that there was an extension of it, or variation of the proverb. And the new proverb went, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. What was going on was that newspaper editors were not comfortable with the idea of silencing questions. And we shouldn't be comfortable with that either. Curiosity might